What does James Gunn need to do to get this new DC universe to work? Well, we think we know the key. You need to look to what already has worked, and nothing has worked better than Young Justice. Let's take a couple minutes to talk about why the new DC universe should look right to Young Justice for not only inspiration, but a roadmap. Well, we already know that the brand new DC Studios is about to take the DCU into a brand new direction, and it's time to talk about what the future of this franchise might look like and why we think Young Justice is the roadmap. We're still unclear exactly what James Gunn is going to do. If this is going to be a full-on reboot, some kind of soft Flashpoint reboot, or something in between, but Gunn has made it pretty clear whatever's going forward is going to be a brand new incarnation of the DCEU. He's already confirmed he's working on a new Superman movie, which will definitely feature a younger actor in the role of Clark Kent, but very little else has been confirmed about the other aspects of the DCU. It is very likely, however, that the Justice League might be completely recast. We've talked about it a ton on this channel, and it appears that at least this soft reboot will feature many, if not all, new faces headed our way. Now, the new DCU needs a great foundation and inspiration to get it off the ground, and we really think that is a pretty clear choice. Gunn has already stated that he's looking towards animated projects like Young Justice for that inspiration, and that is an excellent plan. Over the years, Young Justice has created a very special relationship with its fans, and it's because of a few key moves that help develop those relationships and create a world that everybody watching seemed to be able to relate to in an easy way. So let's talk about these ideas that we think work in Young Justice that would work in the new DCU, including moving timelines forward, altering and adapting characters, as well as picking various eras from the DC universe and bringing them all together. Let's start off our conversation with that. Now, one of the things about the eras of DC Comics is there's so many great stories to choose from, and one thing Young Justice has done super well is to freely mix and match various aspects of these different eras and bring them all together in one timeline on Earth 16. This has created some unique dynamics for the show and never before seen relationships even in the comics. Now, this typically involves swapping out relationships between characters based on that timeline. Jaime Reyes is typically a friend of Damian Wayne's, but in Young Justice, he works with Tim Drake. This happens quite a few times throughout the series, but every single time they make one of these creative decisions, it helps propel the story forward, and they don't force these two pieces together. I think this is a key aspect of the Young Justice series that James Gunn needs to look to make the new world work. Unfortunately, many characters from the various eras of the DC Comics sometimes are definitively different than their modern counterparts, and Young Justice has managed to take those different eras and tweak all of the characters to fit together in a cohesive way. Now, this does require some other altering of the characters, and we're going to talk about that in just a second, but bringing all these various aspects and eras of DC Comics together on one page will allow James Gunn to write a story without being beholden to comic book canon or things that have happened in the past. Greg Weisman and crew have taken advantage of this on the show, and it really does work. In order to do this, this requires the second step, and one of the hardest things I think James Gunn is going to have to do, and that is altering, adapting, or modernizing some of these characters. Everything in Young Justice does a great job of having kind of common ties and helping each one of these characters fit into the story in a proper way. As we learned more about Apocalypse and Mother Boxes and Father Boxes, we got to know Cyborg and Halo, Cyborg being associated with the Father Box and Halo with the Mother Box. These aspects of the story really did change those characters up quite a bit from the comics, but altering their origin stories actually progressed the overall story instead of inhibiting it. I've never heard anybody criticize any of these changes in origin stories in Young Justice, and that's because it helped push the story forward. One other instance of the show doing this very well is a character who used to be a villain that ultimately became one of the heroes of the show. That would be Artemis. Now, we met Artemis in season 1, and she was always kind of an outsider, but in the comics, she's very different. Now, in the comics, she's still known as Tigress, and still is the daughter of Sportsmaster, and even has a child in the comics with Icicle Jr., but she's not really what you would call a serious villain. Now, when you look at how she's been adapted in Young Justice, she's grown into one of the most popular characters on the show. By basically having the freedom to completely rewrite the character, she has become not only more interesting, but definitely a more competent character in the overall world of most of her powers and stuff do embrace her comic book origin. But they don't mind making the alterations they need to make it work once again within the story. They do this with other characters beyond Artemis, and Gunn should look to the series and notice how less popular characters, something he's definitely not afraid to embrace, can actually grow and expand to the whole franchise and the mythology. This is something he did great with the Suicide Squad, and I really do think it will be something he fully embraces moving forward. Now, one of the final things that James Gunn can do to make the new DCU learn lessons from Young Justice is don't be afraid to move the timelines. One thing about Young Justice all of us know is there has been time jumps, and despite them being somewhat controversial with some people, that whole relation to time completely works for the show. Every season takes place several years after the last, with the time between 1 and 2 being 5 years. This allows lots of characters to come and go and develop off-screen relationships that we don't have to be front and center for. These are the things that happen in real life in our world, and I think it would absolutely work within the DCU. Young Justice has moved the timeline almost 10 years, and during that time frame we've seen major changes, probably the biggest example being Superboy and Miss Martian finally tying the knot this last season. Additionally, focusing on the impact of the timeline helps the series show how the Earth itself has changed due to the presence of superheroes. The show really does a great job of never trying to make Earth 16 seem too much like our world. Instead, it absolutely works hard to differentiate between our world and their history. This is something the new James Gunn DCU absolutely needs to do and fully embrace. Embracing that from the beginning is something that could definitely put them in front of the MCU. Marvel really didn't start to directly address in the MCU how the world is impacted by these things until we got to Civil War. Now, in the Phase 4 timeframe, we're really seeing the impacts of superheroes on the world, and that alone creates a better storytelling environment. James Gunn should not shy away from this from day one, and pushing that forward is absolutely a great idea. It would be great if over the 10-year plan, we not only saw the world get used to seeing superheroes, but embracing them and embracing the outcome of their adventures. As with the Marvel Universe, these things don't happen in a vacuum, and they impact the wider world. Seeing James Gunn grow his world in a way that shows these impacts and the impacts on regular people really does help flesh out that kind of world and makes it more real for the audience. This builds connection and is exactly what has gotten people to buy into the MCU. It's the little things in that world that make it seem real, not the spectacular things. Seeing a giant starfish trample a Caribbean town would definitely impact the population, but what little things would those people change in their normal life would make it seem much more real. Now, what James Gunn does with this all, we're going to have to wait and see. This is just our theories and recommendations. I really do think Gunn should look to success to find success of his own. And honestly, there really has never been an animated series that has done such a great job at world building as Young Justice. To be fair, Young Justice is not alone in this venture. Justice League, and particularly Justice League Unlimited, did a great job of showing the impact of the superheroes on the outside world, and once again, Gunn has pointed to that series as being some form of inspiration, so hopefully these are the lessons the new DCU implements into their plan, and I don't think we're going to have a long time to wait. Announcements are coming soon.